Too cold. It's not great weather, is it?
Three mountains, the three highest peaks in the whole of Britain, and a clock ticking down from 24 hours. Now picture the woman taking on that punishing challenge. Not a professional athlete, not a full-time climber. The Princess of Wales, the future Queen, and a woman who, just a year or so ago, was not scaling mountains at all but quietly fighting a cancer diagnosis that stopped the nation in its tracks. This weekend, Catherine did something genuinely extraordinary. She climbed Ben Nevis, Scafell Pike and Snowdon, the tallest mountains in Scotland, England and Wales, one after another, inside a single day. And she did it not for a headline, not for a photo opportunity, but for the cancer charity attached to the very hospital that treated her. It is one of the most powerful, most moving royal moments of the year, and it has people talking for all the right reasons. So settle in and stay with me, because today we are going to unpack this remarkable feat properly, what she actually did, and just how hard it was. Why she chose this particular challenge, and why it means so much more than it might first appear. And then, because this is what we do here, we will ask the honest, bigger question underneath the celebration. Is this stunning, personal, hands-on style the future of royal service, or does it come with a quieter cost that is worth thinking about? Both things can be true, and we will weigh them fairly. Here is what I promise you. I am going to treat this with the care it deserves because it touches on her health, and I will only ever deal in what she herself has chosen to share. I will celebrate an astonishing achievement loudly because it earns it, and I will still think seriously about what it signals for the kind of queen she is becoming. Stay with me, because this is a story about resilience, gratitude, and a future queen quietly rewriting the rules of what royal duty can look like. This is Richard Valentin. I'm Richard. Let's get into it. Now, a careful word before we go on. This story is bound up with Catherine's health, and that is sacred ground. So I'm going to stick strictly to the facts she has made public herself, and nothing more. I will not speculate about medical details she has kept private because that is her business and hers alone. What I can do and what I want to do is celebrate what she has achieved and what it clearly means to her. And because this is a family occasion, involving young children only at the edges, I will keep them right there at the edges, mentioning them as plain fact and no more. As always, I will tell you where the ground is solid. What she did, and what she said about it, is confirmed and on the record. The bigger reflection at the end is partly my reading. Let's begin with the sheer scale of what she pulled off. Let's start with the challenge itself, because to understand how impressive this is, you need to grasp just how brutal it really is. The event is called the National Three Peaks Challenge, and it is a serious undertaking that tests fit, experienced walkers to their limits. The goal is to climb the three highest mountains in Scotland, England and Wales within 24 hours. That means Ben Nevis in the Scottish Highlands, the tallest of them all. Then Scafell Pike in the English Lake District. And finally Ir Wydfa, better known as Snowdon in Wales. 3 enormous climbs, in 3 different countries, in a single day, with long, exhausting drives in between just to get from one mountain to the next. This is not a gentle countryside stroll. It is a grueling test of stamina, of willpower, and of sheer physical grit. People train for months to attempt it, and plenty do not finish. To put some real scale on it, consider what the full challenge actually demands. Ben Nevis alone rises well over 4,000 feet, its summit often cold, wet, and shrouded in cloud even in summer. Add the ascents of Scafell Pike and Snowdon on top, and you are talking about climbing many thousands of feet in total across roughly 23 miles of steep, rough mountain paths. And that is only the walking. Between the 3 peaks lie hundreds of miles of driving, up and down the length of Britain, so that much of the 24 hours is spent not resting but travelling, cramped and sleep-deprived from one mountain base to the next. It is a test designed to break all but the most determined. Experienced hikers describe the second and third climbs, attempted on aching legs and no sleep, as the hardest physical thing they have ever done. And Catherine did it. According to the reporting, the Princess of Wales completed the full challenge within that 24-hour window with the support of a mountain rescue team before being reunited with her family at the finish. Let that sink in for a moment. A working member of the royal family, and the future queen, spent a day and a night hauling herself up and down the 3 highest mountains in the land. This was not a token appearance where a royal turns up, waves at the summit, and heads home. This was the real thing, start to finish, the full punishing route. It is the kind of physical achievement that would leave most people, of any age, utterly floored. Just sit with the physical reality of it for a moment, because the pictures make it look far easier than it is. The wind on an exposed summit, strong enough to knock you off balance. The rain that soaks through everything and never quite stops on the high tops. The relentless burn in the thighs on the steep sections, and the jarring ache in the knees on the long descents, which are often harder than the climbs. The dizzy tiredness of pushing on through the night. The blisters. The cold. The moments where every instinct is screaming at you to stop. She went through all of that, not once but 3 times over, on 3 separate mountains, and she kept going until it was done. That is what sits behind the smiling photograph at the finish line. Not glamour, but grit. Here is a way to feel just how demanding this is. Think about the last time you climbed a single steep hill and felt your legs burn and your lungs heave. Now imagine doing that up a mountain over 4,000 feet high, then getting into a vehicle for a long drive, climbing a second mountain, driving again and climbing a third, all without proper sleep, racing a clock the entire way. Most of us would struggle with just one of those peaks. She took on all 3, back to back, in a day. Whatever else you think about the royal family, that is a feat of genuine physical courage, and it deserves to be recognized as exactly that. Now, the how is impressive, but the why is where this story becomes truly moving. Let's turn to why she did it, because the motivation behind this challenge is what lifts it from an impressive stunt to something deeply meaningful. Catherine did not climb those mountains for just any cause. She did it to raise awareness and funds for the Royal Marsden Cancer Charity. And that name matters enormously, because the Royal Marsden is one of the world's leading cancer hospitals, and it is the place where Catherine herself was treated. This is the crucial thread that ties the whole thing together. Roughly a year and a half ago, in early 2024, the princess revealed to a shocked public that she had been diagnosed with cancer. She then went through a course of treatment, largely in private, before sharing the deeply welcome news, around the start of 2025, that she was in remission. So this was not an abstract act of charity. This was a woman returning to the very institution that helped save her, and giving back, in the most physical and demanding way she possibly could. It is worth understanding the place at the heart of this, because it deepens the meaning. The Royal Marsden was the world's first hospital dedicated entirely to the study and treatment of cancer, and it remains a global leader in the field, treating and researching the disease at the very frontier of medicine. Its charity funds the extra care, the research, the equipment, and the support that go beyond what is otherwise possible. For Catherine to choose this particular cause is for her to point directly at the people and the place that carried her through her darkest chapter. When she raises money for them, she is not making a distant gesture. She is repaying, in the most public way she can, a debt that is intensely personal. And in doing so, she shines a national spotlight on the very institution that gave her, and gives so many others, a second chance. And she was open about her reason, in her own words, which I will keep exactly as she framed them. She said she wanted to give something back, and she spoke about wanting to help people understand a truth that anyone touched by this illness knows deeply. That life beyond a cancer diagnosis requires more than just the medical treatment itself. That recovery is about far more than the clinical side, that it involves rebuilding your strength, your spirit, and your sense of yourself. By taking on something so physically enormous, she was, in a sense, embodying that very message. Look, she seemed to be saying, at what the human body and spirit can do, even after everything. There is a quiet power in that which no speech could match. Quick aside here, because it is easy to rush past. Notice that she did not simply write a check or lend her name to a poster or record a heartfelt video from a comfortable sofa, all of which would have been perfectly respectable ways for a royal to support a cause. She chose the hardest possible option. She chose to put herself through a genuine ordeal to make the point unmistakable. In a media world that is drowning in words and gestures and carefully worded statements, an act of real, visible, physical effort cuts through in a way nothing else does. That choice, to do rather than merely to say, is a large part of why this story traveled around the world. She understood, whether by instinct or design, that actions really do speak louder. There is a subtle wisdom in the specific message she chose to carry too, and it is worth drawing out. For a long time, the public conversation about cancer has focused, understandably, on the treatment itself, on the operations and the medicines and the moment you are told the disease has gone. But anyone who has walked that road or watched a loved one walk it knows that the ending of treatment is not the ending of the story. There is a long, quiet, often invisible journey of recovery afterwards, of rebuilding a body and a mind that have been through an ordeal. By using her own platform to say out loud that life after a diagnosis needs more than medicine, Catherine gave voice to something millions of people feel but rarely hear acknowledged by someone so prominent. That in itself may be as valuable as any money she raised. I want to pause and be honest with you about why this one hits differently. On this channel we cover a great deal of royal noise, the money, the feuds, the strategy, the endless back and forth. And it can all start to feel like a game played by very privileged people far removed from ordinary life. But cancer is not that. Cancer is the great leveler, a fear that has touched almost every family watching this, in one way or another. And so to see a future queen, who could have chosen a gentle, comfortable form of giving back, instead choose to punish her own body up 3 mountains to support the people who treat this illness, cuts through all the usual noise. It feels real, because it is real. That is why this story has landed so powerfully, and why it deserved more than a passing mention. Now, let's get to the moment she came down off that final mountain. Let's look at the finish now, because the emotional payoff of this challenge, the moment she completed it, is genuinely heartwarming. After that grueling 24 hours, Catherine was reunited with the people who matter most to her. According to the reporting, she came off the final mountain to be met by her husband, Prince William, their 3 children, and members of her own family, the Middletons. And the pictures she chose to share afterwards told the whole story. There was a warm, powerful embrace with William, the kind of hug that says more than words ever could after an ordeal like that. There were her children, there to cheer their mother on, and there was the wider Middleton clan, the tight-knit family who have so clearly been her anchor throughout everything. Her brother James was even spotted making part of the climb alongside her, up Snowdon. This was a family effort, a family celebration, and a family embrace at the end. There is something very telling in that choice of images. Catherine is famously private, especially when it comes to her children and her family life. She guards that world fiercely, and rightly so. So the fact that she chose to share these particular photographs, the hug, the beaming family, the sense of a shared triumph tells you how much this achievement meant to her. It was not a formal posed royal portrait, it was a real family celebrating a real hard-won victory together, and it quietly underlined the thing that everyone who follows this family has come to understand, that behind the future queen stands a devoted, grounded and deeply supportive family who have carried her through the hardest chapter of her life. It was, in every sense, a moment of joy earned the hard way. Let me take a breath with you here, because it is worth simply picturing that finish line for a second. Imagine the state she must have been in, legs like lead, utterly spent, running on no sleep after a full day and night on the mountains. And then, at the bottom of that final descent, there they all are. Her husband, arms open. Her children, waiting. Her parents and her brother and sister, the family who have known her since long before any of this. The relief and the joy of that reunion, after everything the past 2 years have thrown at her, must have been overwhelming. You do not need to be royal to feel the pull of that image. It is just a family, wrapping around one of their own at the end of something hard, glad beyond words that she is well enough to have done it at all. That is the picture she chose to share, and it is easy to see why. There is a broader point tucked inside all of this, about the role her family has played. Throughout her illness and her recovery, one thing has been quietly constant, and that is the presence of the Middletons. Catherine grew up in a close, loving, down-to-earth family, and that grounding has clearly been one of her great sources of strength. Her brother climbing part of the route alongside her was not just a nice detail, it was a small symbol of the way this family shows up for each other, physically, side by side, when it counts. In a world of royal grandeur, there is something reassuringly ordinary and human about that. and it may well be one of the secrets to how Catherine has weathered a storm that would have broken many people. Now, this triumphant weekend is also a signpost, pointing towards something bigger about who Catherine is becoming. Let's step back and look at the bigger picture now, because this challenge is not just a one-off feat. It is a powerful statement about the new phase Catherine has entered, and the kind of royal she is choosing to be. To see it clearly, you have to remember where she was not long ago. Through her illness, Catherine largely disappeared from public life, and understandably so. For many long months, the future queen was absent, recovering in private, and the public waited anxiously for her return. So every step she has taken back into the spotlight this year has been watched closely and treated as a milestone. And this, climbing 3 mountains for the hospital that treated her, is perhaps the boldest milestone yet. It is a declaration, written not in words but in action, that she is back, that she is strong, and that she intends to use her platform in a powerful new way. Think about the arc of her return, because it makes this feat even more striking. It began with careful, gentle reappearances, a balcony moment here, a single engagement there, each one greeted with enormous public warmth and a collective sigh of relief. Every outing was measured, protected, easing her back into a role she had been forced to step away from. And now at the far end of that careful journey comes this, not a gentle reappearance at all, but a mountain-conquering, body-testing feat of endurance. The distance travelled, from a woman recovering quietly out of sight to a woman racing up the highest peaks in Britain, is staggering when you lay it out. It is the clearest possible signal that she does not intend to return to public life as a fragile figure to be handled with care. She intends to return as a force. And notice the kind of royal it reveals her to be. This is not the traditional model of royal duty, the ribbon cuttings and the polite receptions and the careful distance. This is something more modern, more personal, and far more hands-on. Catherine is taking her own most difficult experience, her cancer journey, and transforming it into active, physical advocacy. She is not just lending her name to a cause from a comfortable distance, she is putting her own body through an ordeal to make a point about strength and recovery. As I read it, this is Catherine finding her own distinctive voice as a future queen. Where others give speeches, she is choosing to lead by doing by example, by sheer visible effort. It is a compelling, authentic, and thoroughly modern vision of what a royal can be. You can also see in this how she is quietly carving out a lane entirely her own. Her husband William has his big causes, homelessness and the environment and mental health, pursued through long-term programs and campaigns. The king has his. And Catherine, it seems, is planting her flag firmly in the ground of early childhood, and increasingly now of cancer and recovery, causes she can speak to with a rare and hard-won authority. There is a real shrewdness in that. She is not competing with anyone. She is doing the thing only she can do, drawing on the one experience that is uniquely, painfully hers. And that gives her advocacy a weight and a credibility that no amount of official briefing could ever manufacture. And yet, precisely because it is so new and so personal, it is worth asking the honest question on the other side, so let's weigh it properly. Think of it a little like a door swinging open. For years, the royal approach to charity was to stand in the doorway, warm and supportive, but firmly inside the house, keeping the public at a respectful distance. What Catherine is doing is stepping right out through that door into the open, sharing something of her own life to make the cause hit home. It is braver, and it is far more powerful. But an open door lets a great deal through in both directions. That is not a reason to keep it shut. It is simply worth being aware of, as she decides how wide to open it, and how often. Which brings us to the 2 honest ways of reading this remarkable weekend. Let's weigh the 2 ways of seeing this now, because while this was a wonderful thing to witness, a fair look considers what it signals from more than one angle. The first reading, and by far the most powerful, is the celebratory one. On this view, Catherine has discovered a genuinely brilliant new model of royal service. By turning her personal ordeal into public action, she does something no ordinary patronage can. She inspires. She shows millions of people touched by cancer that there is strength and life on the other side of it. She raises real money and real awareness for a cause she understands from the inside, and she demonstrates a courage and an authenticity that make the monarchy feel relevant, human, and genuinely useful. On this reading, this is royal duty at its very finest, a future queen using her own hardest experience to lift others and proving that the crown can still do real good in the world. It is difficult, frankly, to argue against how moving and how effective that is. And I suspect if the comments on stories like this are anything to go by, that most of you feel exactly that. There is a particular kind of response that a genuinely good deed provokes, one that cuts straight through the usual arguments about royal money and royal privilege. People who have no strong feelings about the monarchy at all, and even some who are skeptical of it, find themselves moved by this, because it is not really about the institution. It is about a person, someone who was very ill, who got better, and who chose to spend her recovered strength helping others in the same fight. That is a human story before it is a royal one, and it lands as one. If you felt that, you are far from alone. The second reading is gentler, and it is not a criticism so much as a thoughtful question. It goes like this. Catherine has always been, and has always valued being, an intensely private person, especially about her health and her family. She fought to keep her treatment out of the public glare, and that privacy was clearly precious to her. So there is a fair question about the road she now appears to be stepping onto. When a royal turns their personal health journey into a public campaign, however admirable the cause, they also invite the public deeper into a part of their life that was once entirely their own. Does that openness, sustained over time, risk chipping away at the very privacy she so carefully protected? And is a physically punishing personal challenge the most sustainable model of duty for a future queen, or a very high bar she may feel bound to keep clearing? These are not accusations. They are the honest questions that come with any new path, and Catherine is genuinely charting a new one. Here is where I land, and I want to be clear about it. On this occasion, the celebratory reading wins, and it wins comfortably. What she did was brave, generous, and quietly inspiring, and the small, thoughtful cautions of the second reading do not come close to outweighing it. This was a good thing, done for good reasons, and it should be celebrated as such. That said, the gentle question underneath is still worth holding, not as a criticism of this achievement, but as something to watch over the years ahead. Catherine is inventing a new kind of royal role in real time, one built on personal openness and physical example. It is inspiring today. The interesting question is simply what it becomes over a lifetime, and whether the woman who so values her privacy can keep giving this much of herself without giving away too much. Time, as ever, will tell. And here is the thing that makes me lean so firmly toward celebration in the end. You can always find a careful, cautious question to raise about almost any bold act. That is easy. What is rare, and what is genuinely hard, is the boldness itself. Plenty of people could have advised Catherine to play it safe, to mark her return with something gentle and low risk, to protect herself. She chose instead to do something difficult, generous, and a little bit daring in the service of others. Whatever careful questions we raise afterwards, we should not lose sight of the simple fact at the center. She did not have to do any of this. She chose to, for people she will never meet, out of gratitude for the care she received. That instinct, to turn your own suffering outward into help for others, is about the best of what any of us can do, royal or not. And that leaves us with the question I want to hand to you. When you watch the future queen climb 3 mountains for the hospital that treated her, what do you see? A magnificent, modern reinvention of royal duty, personal, authentic, and genuinely inspiring. Or, alongside your admiration, do you feel a small flicker of a question about how much of herself a future monarch should give to the public, and where the line between admirable openness and lost privacy really lies? The way I see it, this was a triumph, plain and simple, and the questions it raises are for the long road ahead, not for today. But I would love to know how it struck you. Before we close, a quick word on where this fits. This challenge is part of a wider, joyful return to public life for Catherine this year, a summer in which we are seeing more and more of the future queen, stronger and more present with each passing week. Her connection to cancer causes, forged in the hardest way, is clearly going to be a defining thread of her work for years to come. I will keep following that story with all the care it deserves, and when there is more to share, you will hear it here. And that is where we will leave it today. Thank you for spending this time with me on a story that is, at heart, about hope. Cancer has touched so many of the families watching this, and I do not take that lightly. If this one struck close to home for you, I hope Catherine's example offered a small measure of encouragement, because that, above all, seems to be exactly what she intended. The fact that you chose to spend it here, on the meaning of it rather than just the spectacle, means a great deal. Now I would love to hear from you. When you picture the ideal future queen, is she the one out on the mountainside, putting herself through the ringer to give back and to inspire? Do you find this new, personal, hands-on style of royal duty stirring, exactly what a modern monarchy needs? Or do you hope she also holds a little something back for herself, and keeps some of that hard-won privacy? There is no wrong answer here, only your honest heart. Share your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one, and on a story with this much warmth in it, the conversation down there is always something special. And before you go, here is what is coming next. We are staying with Catherine, and with this remarkable summer of hers, because just days after conquering those mountains, she turned up somewhere far gentler and delighted everyone all over again. Next time, we will look at her surprise return to Wimbledon, a quiet, lovely moment that marked another real milestone on her road back. So if you have not yet, subscribe and switch on your notifications so it reaches you the moment it lands. Until then, take good care of yourself and of the people you love. I'm Richard, and I will see you again very soon.